In this video, we will witness the entertaining cigarette act of the famous magician Mario Lopez and the balloon magic trick of magician Nayafin Fein. We will also discover the secrets behind these magic acts. If you enjoy the video, please like it to show your support. First, let's watch the funny cigarette act of the famous magician Mario Lopez. Mario has performed this famous act on the street as well, and we are going to decode it from here. In this act, Mario holds a cigarette and a lighter in his hand. When he tries to light the cigarette by placing it in his mouth, the cigarette vanishes, and then he magically retrieves it from a different location. But when he attempts to light it again, the lighter disappears. After a few tricks, the lighter magically returns to his hand. Finally, Mario decides not to smoke and keeps the lighter in his pocket. Now he holds the cigarette in his hand, but instead of smoking it, he partially inserts it into his nostril. Observers are astonished by what happens next. The magician manipulates the cigarette in and out of his nostril and mouth. The magic doesn't stop there. He then pushes the partially inserted cigarette all the way inside his nose and then pulls it out completely from his mouth. This act leaves everyone amazed and wondering how he does it. Before revealing the secret behind this magic trick, if you enjoyed Mario Lopez's performance, be sure to like the video. Now, let's reveal the secrets behind Mario Lopez's cigarette act. Here, the magician has a cigarette and a lighter in his hand, and when he tries to put the cigarette in his mouth, it disappears. If you watch it in slow motion, you can see how cleverly the magician moves the hand holding the cigarette behind his other hand, where he secretly tucks the cigarette behind his hand using his thumb. You can observe his thumb pressing the cigarette against his hand, making it appear as if it has vanished. Then, the magician acts as if he is pulling it out from his elbow. However, you now know that the cigarette was never gone, it was always in the magician's hand. Now, when the magician attempts to light the cigarette again, the lighter vanishes from his hand. In reality, when the magician acts like he is pulling the cigarette from behind his elbow, you can see his other hand moving towards the back, cleverly hiding the lighter behind his neck. Mario is skilled in sleight of hand techniques, which allows him to perform these tricks seamlessly without anyone noticing. After that, you can see the magician reaching behind his neck to retrieve the lighter. He then puts the lighter in his pocket and partially inserts the cigarette into his nostril for the funny act. In reality, there are two separate cigarettes. When the magician places the lighter in his pocket, he secretly takes the second cigarette from the same pocket, leaving him with two cigarettes in his hand, one that is visible to everyone and the other hidden behind his hand. Now, as the magician puts the cigarette into his nostril, pay close attention to his hand, where he takes the hidden cigarette from his left hand to his right hand and places it inside his mouth. He pretends that the cigarette going into his nose is causing discomfort, but in reality, he uses his action as a cover to put a second cigarette in his mouth. If you observe carefully, you can see the moment when he opens his mouth and takes the cigarette inside. Now, the magician has a separate cigarette in his nose and another one in his mouth, making it easy for him to perform the act seamlessly. However, for the audience watching, it remains a mind-boggling experience. In the final act, the magician pretends to push the half-inserted cigarette entirely into his nostril, giving the illusion that it disappears inside his nose. But in reality, the magician is only acting and cleverly takes the cigarette in his hand. And since there is another cigarette already in his mouth, he easily brings it out, creating the impression that the cigarette went into his nose and then came out through his mouth. However, we now know the secret behind this magic trick. Next, let's move on to the second magic performed by magician Nayafin Fein. In this act, he takes a balloon, blows air into it. Without touching the balloon, he makes it move towards him as if he is controlling it with his magical powers. After that, the magician goes to the balloon and appears to make it float and move in the air without touching it. The way he manipulates the balloon gives the impression that he is using his magical powers to control it. Then, The magician sets the balloon free, and it floats upward in the air. But how does the magician manage to do all of this? Before disclosing the secret, if you are new to this channel, make sure to subscribe to it. Alright, let's now learn the secret behind this magic. First, the magician takes a balloon and fills it with air. Then, he controls the balloon in the air using one hand. In reality, the balloon contains helium gas, which makes it try to float upward, and the magician places his hand on it, giving the illusion that he is controlling the balloon with one hand. Now, the question is, if the magician filled the balloon with air from his mouth, how is there helium gas in it? We'll discover the answer to this question later. But first, let's see what the magician does next. Now the magician places the balloon on a table and signals it to come towards him, and surprisingly, the balloon starts moving towards him. Actually, inside the balloon, there is a small magnetic ball, and under the table, there is a channel with a magnet that can be moved using a remote control. When the magician signals, his assistant moves the magnet under the table towards the magician, and due to the magnetic effect, the magnetic ball inside the balloon also moves in that direction, pulling the balloon towards the magician, and now you know the secret behind the movement of the balloon. After that, the magician makes the balloon levitate in the air without touching it. In reality, when the magician approaches the balloon, he holds an invisible cotton thread in his hand, which is often used by magicians for such levitation acts. The magician attaches this thread to the balloon in a way that is not easily noticeable, and with the help of this hidden thread, the magician performs the levitation act with the balloon. In the end, when the magician sets the balloon free, it flies upward due to the helium gas inside it. But the question remains, where did the helium gas come from, as the magician filled the balloon with air from his mouth? If we observe carefully in the beginning, we notice that the magician is already holding something in his hand, which is actually the balloon with the magnetic ball in it, which he just pretends to take it out from the packet, and then the way he holds the balloon in his hand is slightly different. Moreover, if you pay attention to how he blows air into the balloon, you'll notice that he is not actually blowing air into the balloon. In reality, there's a pipe hidden behind his hand, which is connected to a small helium gas cylinder concealed under his clothes. After taking the balloon in his hand, the magician first connects it to this pipe, and then pretends to blow air into it using his mouth. If you observe closely, the magician blows with great force, but the balloon hardly inflates that much. This mismatch between the force applied and the balloon's inflation is because, in reality, the balloon is being filled with helium from the cylinder, and the valve is controlled by the magician, which he opens when he pretends to blow air inside the balloon from his mouth. This way, the magician astonishes everyone with this act, but now you also know the secret behind this magic. We put in a lot of effort to bring such videos for you, so please like this video and show your support. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe so that you receive notifications for our similar videos.